Hello everyone and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol battle report for the channel. Sora's cameo, nope, never mind, she just left. And we are back in Asgard for today's 18 threat match between the Avengers and the Web Warriors. So without further ado, let's take a look at the two teams taking part today. So it's been a little bit, but the Hulkbuster is back on the table and is leading the Avengers today with his affiliation bonus, which I think is just called Hulkbusters. Bringing along Hawkeye, the cheap and cheerful 2-threat Black Widow, Luke Cage, and then as a ringer we have Rogue. And their tactics cards are obscured by a rock, Avengers Assembled, Helios Laser Bombardment, Tactical Analysis, Second Wind, Medpack, and Rock. And here are the Web Warriors. Although Miles is here, it is the Amazing Spider-Man Peter Parker that will be the affiliation leader, so they can pay 1 power to make a target within 2 or 3, no it is 2, within 2 slowed. We also have Ghost Spider, we have Deadpool as their ringer, and we have Venom. And their tactics cards are All Webbed Up, Aunt May's Wheat Cakes, Brace for Impact, Spider Tracker, and Web Barrier. Here are the two crisis cards in play. It should make for a very violent match. So the Secure is Mutant Madman turns City into Lethal Amusement Park, so there's 4 traps. If you control a trap, then in the cleanup phase, an enemy within 2 takes 1 damage, gains 1 power. There's 1 victory point for each one you hold. And then the classic Fear Grips World is Worthy Terrorized Citizens. Of course you have to Of course you have to do this one when you're playing on an Asgard map. So there is 4 Celestial Hammers, makes tactics cards cost more, makes you deal 1 additional damage when you're rolling for attack, but it has a negative for the tactics cards, and it's 1 VP for each one held. So on this flank of the table we have 2 traps, 1 hammer, then we have 1 hammer right next to each deployment side, and then over here it's the same again, the other 2 traps, and 1 more hammer right there. So we'll get the 2 teams deployed and show you how they've set up. So the battle lines are drawn and we are good to go. The Avengers are to your right and are taking first activation, the Web Warriors are to your left, and I think there is the same number of people in both teams. Yeah, there is. So we'll take a quick look. We have Rogue and Luke Cage down here, then we have the Hulkbuster in between Black Widow and Hawkeye over here, and that's it for this side. And if we come over this side of the table, we've got Ghost Spider, Miles here, we've got Peter in the middle there, and then over here we have Venom and Deadpool. So with that, let's jump into Battle Round 1 and see how this goes. So Black Widow got the game started with her long move. She moved to roughly there with her first movement. Second movement, she got just within 1 of the hammer on that flank of the table, paid her 1 power and has now picked it up. Does put her in the danger zone a little bit, but she does have quite a bit of large backup. And the first activation for the Web Warriors was Gwen, Ghost Spider. She also moves long, so it was pretty much a snap activation for her to double move to within 1 of the hammer on this flank and pay her 1 power to pick that up. Luke Cage activated next for the Avengers and double medium moved to the far side of the Sinister Trap right here to claim it and to put him in rough threat radius of where Gwen ended up. Couldn't do anything to her this time though because he double moved. Miles activated and moved up behind Gwen, but only really used 1 action to get to where you can see him, roughly speaking. He couldn't attack Luke Cage, his threat radius is 3 with his basic attack, so he's just hanging back on purpose just to make sure that Rogue can't get to him this turn. Speaking of which, Rogue activated and she is being hyper aggressive. Luke Cage is holding that back objective, so she was safe to move forwards. Not close enough to contest where Miles ended up, but definitely a viable threat for turn 2 between the 2 targets she has to pick from there. Deadpool activated, moved up once with a medium move, trying to position himself such that if he was to get pushed by the Hulkbuster, he'd just get touched into the rock behind him there. But he's holding the objective marker there. Normally his range 4 guns would mean he'd be able to take a shot at Natasha, but she has stealth, so he can't actually see her. Well, it's always good to have Hawkeye on your side, especially if you can get into a good shooting position, and that's what he did in turn 1. Double moved over to this objective here, next to Natasha, and giving him good range on potentially Deadpool or Venom. And the last time Venom went up against Hawkeye on this channel, it did not end well for Venom, from memory, so they might have to change tactics. The Amazing Spider-Man moved a little bit. He's long movement, but he only needed like a medium move at best to get to the far side of the hammer that started closest to the Web Warriors deployment. He paid 1, picked it up, and then kind of like half moved again behind the statue here to use it for cover, ready next turn to perhaps move in there if he decides to. But from the middle of the map he could just as equally also decide to go over here depending on where the most fighting breaks out. So we're already up to the final activation for the Avengers in Battle Round 1. It was the Hulkbuster, of course, and it did start thanks to its huge base within one of the hammer that had been roughly there. Paid 1 picked it up, moved medium forwards here, and then shot his heavy repulsor hand laser into Amazing Spider-Man, who you see has been wiped out of existence. No, he's not really. He's been pushed backwards small as a result of the damage. He did have cover from the statue for the 1 guaranteed success, and he did have the superior spider sense for full rerolls on it as well. That didn't stop him taking 2 damage though. The attack roll was really good. His defense roll was, thankfully for him, also pretty good. But yeah, 2 damage and pushed backwards small, and now it's over to Venom to end off the first battle round nice and quick. Well, it feels like no matter which side of the table on, Venom is going to have a bad time with that low energy defense of his and extra dice being thrown in for hammers, so he threw Care to the wind and has moved up twice, wanting to go try and steal that hammer back from Natasha next turn. And with that, we're into scoring already for the first battle round. So at the end of battle round 1, things are pretty even with both sides. The Web Warriors are holding the 2, I keep on forgetting if they're classed as traps. No, they're classed as, it is traps, I was correct. Ugh. So at the end of battle round 1, things are pretty even between both sides. The Web Warriors hold both the traps closest to their deployment, Deadpool up there and Miles down here, and then the Avengers obviously hold the 2 closest to them as well, with Hawkeye and, well, just Hawkeye for the top right one, and then Luke Cage down here. So both sides have earned 2 victory points from that. Both sides also have 2 hammers each for 2 more victory points, meaning that as we go into battle round 2, it is even Stevens with 4 victory points to each side, and the Avengers retain their priority. One last thing to mention, the only case of the Sinister Trap being able to be triggered was down here, with Rogue being within 2 of this one, so she has taken 1 additional damage and has been given 1 power as well. So we did say she was going to come out swinging, and that's exactly what Rogue did to get battle round 2 started. She started by showing some Southern hospitality to Ghost Spider for 3 power, resulting in 3 flat damage and including a throw. She got chucked into Miles for 1 damage. Miles fully dodged her being flung into him though, so didn't take anything. But you will notice there's 4 more damage there. That's because she did consider moving in, but there's a high chance that Miles could just knock her back to stop her contesting the objective. So instead she just did her basic absorbing strike on Ghost Spider and managed to do exceptionally well with the roll. Got 4 damage through all said and done, stole a couple of power as well, and has dazed Ghost Spider. So all that damage has equaled a dazed character already. She dropped the hammer she was holding. Rogue paid 1 power to pick it up from the power she generated from the absorbing strike. She's still got 1 damage on her. She's now a target because she has a hammer, but she did well there. Well, the Web Warriors tried to replicate the success the Avengers had on the other flank of the table by activating Venom. He did 2 symbiotic strikes on Black Widow. 5 dice physical, guaranteed bleed, range 3, outside of range 2, so our martial artist didn't apply. First one, big whiff, no damage. Well, it wasn't a literal whiff. Black Widow's defense on 3 dice was actually okay and fully blocked the damage. Second one did 1 damage, and that is way below average. And it kind of indicates that it's going to be one of those kind of games where the dice rolls seem to be favouring one side over the other. That is an embarrassing result. Well, seeing that the dice are in their favour, the Avengers decided to do a little bit of a safe play and activate Black Widow. She shook her bleed to get rid of it, and then moved to the far side of the trap right here, as far back as she can, so just in one, so she's helping Hawkeye control it. But outside of the current threat radius of Deadpool, so we would have to chase her to try and attack her. The Amazing Spider-Man activated, and he proved that the amazing in his name stands for amazingly bad. He started with a web swing, so you place him within 3. He placed himself over here to go after Rogue and also help contest or control this trap. Adds 2 to his next web strike, so he did a web strike, and it did nothing. It didn't even need the super Kree physiology she has. It just did nothing. So then he tried another one, and keep in mind he is getting an extra die because he's holding a hammer. And this one did do damage, it did 2, but her physiology reduces it to 1. And frustrated, he then spent 1 power to give her slow using his affiliation bonus. But disastrously below par. Statistically should not have done that little on 6 or 8 dice followed by 6 dice. But, well, and 4 defense dice, to be fair. It's not like Rogue is easy to take out, but still, he should have done more than 1 damage plus a slow. It's one of those games where the dice is favouring one side and it is random, but it just sucks when it happens because you can see where this is going really early. It was time for the big boy, the Hulkbuster, to activate. He spent 2 on hit and run to get started, so that's an attack followed by a move. He did his heavy repulsor blast on Venom, and it did 3 damage, pushing him back small, so that's why he ended up where you can see him, and then the Hulkbuster moved in. Not enough to get within one of the trap though, it's worth noting, so he's not contesting it. From where he is though, he thought, why not try and steal an activation from Deadpool? Spent 3, the last 3 he had, on Meteor Punch, 8 dice physical, up to 9 because he's holding a hammer, and he smacked Deadpool, but Deadpool's roll was like 3 crits and another success, so he actually blocked all but 1 of the damage. Oh sorry, no, he blocked all the damage actually. That 1 damage is from him getting a wild on the Meteor Punch, so the explode kicked in and exploded on Venom. Now Venom could have countered, but chose not to because he didn't want to feed power to the Hulkbuster. That might not be the right move, but hey, at least the dice roll have gone massively in their favour all of a sudden because Deadpool blocked a lot of damage. Well, Deadpool activated, but independent of him activating, first of all, Aunt May's wheat cakes were played by the Web Warriors. Hopefully that's in focus. So any number of Web Warriors can pay 1, and those that do heal 1 and heal slow as well. Venom and Amazing Spider-Man both paid 1 each to heal the 1 damage on themselves. For Deadpool's actual turn, he moved up, so he's on the far side of the trap there. He is still the only one contesting it because the Hulkbuster's out of range. He then shot his guns at Hawkeye and whiffed badly. No damage. Well, perhaps the inevitable happened. Since Hawkeye was not able to be taken out, he spent his turn just unleashing arrow after arrow into Deadpool's face. The first attack from his full quiver got 2 damage through, the second got another 2 damage through, so that is exactly enough to daze him on his healthy side. So now that objective is being contested by no one. It is worth noting that not a single wild was rolled near the run. It doesn't matter because no stats effects will apply once he flips his card. But yeah, no wilds, just a lot of hits and crits. So thanks to the dazes that have been going on, we're all ready for the last activation for the Web Warriors in Battle Round 2. It is Miles. He moved and then did a web line, which is the same as Spider-Man's earlier. Spend 2, place within 3, and get 2 extra dice on your basic attack. He flipped over to the far side of Luke Cage, contesting the trap that he's been guarding. 4 dice attack became a 6 die attack. All said and done, did 2 damage, but he reduces it down to 1 because of his invulnerable skin. So then he paid 1 power that he got from doing that in order to apply slow to Luke Cage. Well, Luke Cage is ending the turn and started with a Power Man punch into Miles, who did end up there. It did 2 damage to Miles, and that gave him enough power to then do a Sweet Christmas on him, which involves a throw on a wild. Didn't do too well with the roll, but did get the wild. 2 more damage to Miles, and then chucking him into the building with that throw did the 1 other damage needed that he is also KO'd. Did consider using Brace for Impact, but he's been thrown out of radius to contest that this turn anyway, so decided to save it for hopefully a better use later. So either way though, we are at the scoring for Battle Round 2. So then Battle Round 2, that was a rough one to suffer through for the poor Web Warriors, with 3 of them being dazed in the 1 turn. They do now have priority in Battle Round 3 though, so that might make the difference, which they'll need because they are now trailing in points, although they did earn some. Victory points wise, they still hold 1 of the hammers on Amazing Spider-Man for 1, and then the Amazing Spider-Man is also holding this trap back here, which in turn has dealt 1 more damage to Rogue. But that's 1 victory point gained there. The one over there no one is holding. The one over there held by the Avengers, but no one's within range to hurt. And same over here, the Avengers are holding this one. So they've gained 2 from those, and they now hold 3 of the hammers, so they gained another 3 from that, putting them at 9. So 9 is playing 6 in the Avengers' favour. The Web Warriors have priority now though. This could be the turn where they hopefully turn things around. They've got a lot of power to spend if nothing else. It'll just be where to tactically use it to get the best advantage. Let's go into Battle Round 3 and see. So as we start the 3rd battle round, there has been a mistake, a pretty big mistake actually, noticed sadly, and that's despite showing it on camera as well. Confused, the Mutant Madmen turned City into Lethal Amusement Park with one of the other objective cards. This is one where you do actually have to spend power to claim the traps. Now the people who have been holding them all have good physical defense, but there's no guarantee that they definitely would have succeeded. You've got to roll equal to, higher than the number of healthy enemy characters nearby to claim it. Been doing that wrong up to now, So unfortunately we are just going to carry on with it the way we've been doing it, because it's not fair not to at this point, where it will just be highest number of healthy characters within one controlling it. That is a mistake. You're supposed to pay power roll for it against your physical defense. Yeah, physical defense, and that beats the number of close enemy characters that are healthy. So we're just going to play on with it being wrong, because for half the game it has been wrong, and it's looking like it's not going to be a long match anyway, but apologies for that. Anyway, the round did get started with the Amazing Spider-Man, who had one hammer on him. He did one of his basic attacks on Rogue. She took no damage from the first effort, because that's the way this is going. It's just one of those days. He then did another one though, and that did 4 damage, reduced to 3 because of her Kree mutant physiology, but still enough to daze her. So she dropped her hammer. The Amazing Spider-Man has picked it up, but sadly, because he used all his power and both actions, he can't now escape away with those 2 hammers. Well, there's no brakes on the pain train for the Web Warriors. The first activation for the Avengers this turn was the Hulkbuster, and Avengers Assemble was played, and the only person to use it was the Hulkbuster. For tactical reasons, moved within small of his position. He just shifted, so he was contesting the objective. That's all he did. But then another tactics card got used on poor Deadpool, the Helios laser bombardment. The Hulkbuster decided to drop the sky on poor old Deadpool. He only put in 1 power, Black Widow put in 2, and Hawkeye put in 6, plus he had 1 hammer, and it has base 2. So I think in total that was what, 11? Something like 11 dice. That said, he took it like a champ, to be fair. So he did take 5 damage from death rays from space, but he lived. So then the Hulkbuster did a basic strike on him, again +1 because of the hammer on him. Oh, actually, speaking of which, he used 2 tactics cards which would cost +1 each. Did he have enough power for that? Not if he moved via Avengers Assemble. So he can't have moved via Avengers Assemble to have done this, so actually he is not holding that objective, which might make a big difference. So Avengers Assemble is still going to be playable. That did not get played. Forgot that Helios would cost 1 extra, which he only had just enough. So no, he did not use Avengers Assemble, but he did follow up the Helios laser bombardment with a basic strike, which did generate him 1 power, but that's still not enough to play the card. It did do 1 damage to Deadpool though, and that is enough that he isn't even getting to play on his day's side. He is off the table. But now no one is holding that objective because Venom's not at it either. So Gwen activated and kind of went for a bit of a Hail Mary play to try and make something happen for the Web Warriors, because they're not having a good day. Spent 2 on Web Pull to pull Luke Cage small towards her. Not close enough that he is contesting the trap there. She then did a freestyle beatdown on him for 3 power and didn't do anything to him. So then she tried to do just her basic spider combo, whatever it's called. As long as she's attacked once this turn, it goes from 4 to 7 dice. It also was fully blocked. So yeah, it's going that way. Well, a simple retaliatory activation from Luke Cage followed. He did a Power Man punch into Gwen's face, and it spiked kinda well. Did 4 damage to her. She's still standing with 1 HP left, I believe, on her day's side. He then moved small because of his slow back into position on this here. Miles could still knock him off of it, but either way he's forcing a choice, because over here, even if he'd taken Gwen out, Amazing Spider-Man's pretty tough. Well, knowing that there was nowhere safe around that trap that Venom could move to where he wouldn't be in Hawkeye's threat radius with his range 5, he opted to just embrace it, moved so he is contesting, and then did a web snare to drag Clint right into his face. Then he did a We Are Venom. It ended up doing 3 damage, which also means that Venom has healed himself back to full, which is handy. He then tried to finish Clint off with a basic strike and sadly did no damage. It's been a very, very frustrating match for the Web Warriors. So sadly, nothing really achieved there for Venom other than healing himself to full, which might make a difference, because he's about to get a bunch of arrows to the face. Probably, because I think it's either Black Widow or Hawkeye next for the Avengers. So rather than get a retaliatory chomp to the face if he does any damage to him, Hawkeye did activate, but instead of attacking Venom, just opted to retreat back to the trap over here, because giving Venom power would just result in him getting dazed this turn. He wants to leave it to the Hulkbuster essentially, because the Hulkbuster's Meteor Punch doesn't let the target generate power. He can take hits from Venom and easily withstand them, so it just makes much more sense for him to kind of retreat back there. So now it's over to Miles for the final activation in Battle Round 3 for the Web Warriors. Well, there was a little bit of a sneaky play from Miles. He didn't try and push Luke Cage off that trap. Instead, He used a web swing for 2 to put him roughly there, medium move to put him right where you can see him, then he spent 3 on Venom Blast, which even if it hadn't have taken Black Widow out, would have forced her to drop her hammer. As it turns out, it did 4 damage, so it would have one-shot her. So she is dazed. She has dropped her hammer. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any power left to pick it up, so it's been placed within 2 up there to force whoever goes to get it to remove themselves from the trap. He isn't contesting that one there. That might make a difference. We'll see. But it was going to be over to Black Widow, but obviously she's just been dazed, so we're into scoring. So as bad as it's looking for the Web Warriors, that little play at the end there to deny the Avengers some points have made it so that they've closed the gap a little bit. The Web Warriors aren't that great in fights, but they're good at objective running. And that's what they tried to do there. It would have worked out even more in their favour if Deadpool had gotten a turn, or if Venom's attack had been just a little bit better. But to cover the points, down here, Amazing Spider-Man has 2 hammers and he's holding this trap, so he just generated 3 on his own, and Venom generated 1 over there, so they gained a massive 4. The Avengers, the Hulkbuster is still holding a hammer, and Hawkeye is holding that trap, and Luke Cage is holding this trap, so they gained 3. Speaking of the traps, no one around, no enemy around to damage because Rogue was, I got distracted by the text. Rogue is dazed, so no damage there, no one there. Hulkbuster is, actually the Hulkbuster probably is within 2, so he's probably taking 1 damage from that, and Miles is also taking 1 damage and gaining 1 power from the traps, hurting them. With that, we're going into Battle Round 4. The Avengers have gone back to having first activation for the round, and they are ahead with 12 victory points. But the Web Warriors have caught up. They've got 10. So Battle Round 4 got started with Hawkeye looking for some murder, death, kill. He started by spending 2 on a hook arrow to move over there. He paid 1 to pick up the hammer, and then he unleashed some arrows into poor Miles. 2 damage from the first barrage, and then 3 from the second, which unfortunately means we have to lean in because Miles is off the table. Now, because it took both shots, he didn't move back into the trap, so only Black Widow is holding it currently, but another threat removed. It's also worth mentioning Hawkeye has been rolling well, as he often does, especially with the hammer thrown in there. He's also very consistently not been getting wilds, just a lot of crits and hits. Oh yeah, and sorry, during his turn, second wind was played. He and Luke Cage both paid 1. They didn't have hammers at the time, so it was just 1 each, and they have healed 1. So just when you think there's a glimmer of hope for the Web Warriors, you go and activate the amazingly bad Spider-Man. He did 2 of his basic attacks on Rogue, and he has 2 hammers, so that was up to 7 dice I think on each of them, and neither got through her defense. Neither of them. Not a single point of damage got through to her. So he's just hanging around there, 2 hammers, dealing no damage, generating no power. He is the only healthy character there holding that trap, to be fair. But he has consistently done very poorly this match. So what followed next was a pretty back and forth beatdown between the Hulkbuster and Venom. It would be really cool to see that happen in a movie or something. But Hulkbuster started by spending 2 on hit and run just to move himself closer to the objective after firing a heavy repulsor blast into Venom. It did 4 damage to him, pretty good. Shoved him backwards into the tree, but he stopped when he hit the tree. Or, as a push, so no contact damage. So then he did a meteor punch. Oh, sorry, no. Then Venom countered with so many snacks, we are Venom, which did 5 damage, overwriting and healing the 4 damage he had on him. So he was back to full health. Unfortunately, the Hulkbuster had a larger punch, which is weighing, and he did meteor punch, no power generation on that for Venom. And it did 8 damage, so, pardon me, that's an instant daze on Venom. He's got 7 health on his healthy size, I believe. So he is dazed, and even if that hadn't quite got the job done, he had enough power to then do Now I'm Angry to pick up either the massive boulder or the tree and smack Venom with that. So, either way, Venom was going down there, and that's probably all she wrote. But hey, they still have Ghost Spider to do something with. Well, let it never be said that Gwen doesn't try. She moved along to where you can see her, and then spent a total of 4 power on 2 web lines. You can't use it on the same character more than once, but you can use it more than once in a turn. So she used it once on Rogue, once on Luke to move them out of position on the objectives, then tried to lay the smackdown on Luke and didn't do any damage. They both got 6 health, she's on her day side, he's on his healthy. It was very unlikely she was going to do anything. Spike might have made a difference, but as things stand, Black Widow, Rogue and Luke Cage all get to activate. They don't even need to take down Spider-Man. Luke Cage just needs to walk back into position here. He's the only healthy character there. Or Rogue could do that, actually. If we want an ultimate BM, he could just counter Spider-Man being there. Rogue claims this one by herself, and that takes us to the end of the game. So the game is indeed over at the end of Battle Round 4, although to be fair, the Web Warriors might have looked like they were just getting beaten down from the very start, which they were. The dice were just not in their favour. They came back a little bit. Other than the BM here stopping Spider-Man scoring, if we go over the scores, Amazing Spider-Man has 2 hammers, so they did gain 2, putting them at 12. The Avengers only just made it to the 16. They hold the back trap there, the Hulkbuster holds the back trap there and is holding a hammer. Hawkeye's holding a hammer over there, and Rogue is holding this down here. It's a draw here between healthy characters, which puts them exactly on 16. So we are calling it in the Avengers' favour there. Once again, apologies for not doing the Mutant Madman secure card correctly, but when you're halfway through a game and you notice you haven't been doing the checks to see if you claim the trap, the best bet is just to play on with the rules you've been using rather than halfway through changing it, because some of those early rolls could have made a difference one way or the other, points wise. But, well, I say that, the ultimate loss here was just the dice favouring the Avengers, and it always sucks when a game goes like that. It happens too much with Crisis Protocol, where it just seems like it's obviously chance, but it just sucks when chance favours one side over the other. The Web Warriors, they're not super great at fighting, but they're great at objective running. Every so often they still need to be able to land a hit. Amazing Spider-Man is probably the worst he's performed ever on the table. He just, even though he ended up with 2 hammers, he just wasn't doing enough for his point value. I'm not sure if, like, getting him out of the team, having Miles as the leader, maybe, I don't know, get rid of Venom, and then you could have 2 extra people in, 2-3 threats, or a 4 and a 2, that might make more difference. The Amazing Spider-Man doesn't seem to make back his threat value. Venom struggles against Avenger lists, because Avenger lists can very easily get lots of energy damage. But he actually held his own there. When I was covering him fighting the Hulkbuster, the damage was on the table obviously, but I never specifically mentioned, when he countered, he managed to spike quite high and did 5. The Hulkbuster could have lowered it, but chose not to because he wanted the power. But still. So that is it for what was a disappointing showing for the Web Warriors. They've never really had a decent showing, except one match where they just objective snatched turn 1 and then spent the rest of the game cowering in corners, which was a fair win, but not an exciting win. That's kind of their place at the moment until they get some backup, I think. Anyway, we might see the Asgardian map one more time before it's removed and changed for something else. I'm not sure who with, but be sure to come back hopefully. Again, apologies for doing the secure card wrong, it happens. I've not been playing as much Crisis Protocol, so mistakes like that happen, but hopefully still enjoyable. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Ta for now.